Hi, everyone. Welcome back. If you're just joining us and you weren't here for Clément's session to kick off the day, thanks for joining. As I said, we did kick off the day with our co-founder and CTO, Clément Stenac. He talked a little bit more high level about what we're thinking about, some of the most recent things that we've implemented in the product to work toward that vision. And now I'm very excited to welcome Sophie DNA, our Global VP of Product and Business Solutions, who will take this one step further when it comes to roadmap and what's to come. Just a quick reminder that there will be a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. So if you do have questions, don't hesitate to put them in the questions section, not in the chat, but the Q&A section, so that we can have those for the Q&A section. Also, poor Sophie is a little bit sick today, so you'll have to forgive her for any sneezing that occurs. We weren't able to find a solution for that, but she'll manage, and you're in great hands. Take it away, Sophie.
Thanks a lot, Lynn, and warm apologies in advance for unwanted coughing, unwanted sneezing, unwanted everything. I hope I will do my very best to spend the next close to 45 minutes that we have all together. So as Lynn was saying, please don't hesitate to post the questions that you have. We'll see if we can tackle them as we go, or we will tackle them at the very end. So I have the pleasure of spending some time with you to ultimately speak about what is our current vision of our product and where do we want to take it forward. And when we start these sessions, one of the main questions we can ask ourselves is whether actually we're going to be talking about things that are drastically different or about something that is more in line with the continuity of what Dataiku has been heading towards for the past 11 years now. Because at the end of the day, one of the things that is very important for us is that we haven't really changed our convictions. We've been talking about something called everyday AI for now a number of years. That idea of everyday AI being that we strongly believe that data is a tool, that AI is a tool, and that these tools are here to deliver different types of impacts across organizations. We believe that every single business process can be augmented by the usage of data and AI, but the way it can be augmented by the usage of data and AI is actually quite different from one business process to another. Some of these business processes can be completely rethought and streamlined. For others, it will be more by making sure that the decision-making is slightly different, or that the processes leading from step number one to the final step are being revisited. As part of that conviction that business processes can be augmented is the second one, that actually it's about including professionals in this building and reinvention cycle. We believe that data people, data experts are critical in better usage of data and AI. But we also believe that if these data professionals are the only ones using data, first things first, that usage of data remains very limited. Second, that it can lack the right type of business acumen. It can lack the right type of business understanding that ultimately will make change happen. So as part of our everyday AI conviction, there is the idea that data professionals are, of course, a critical part of the people needing to be in the loop, but that it's about including every single professional in this building or AI consumption cycle. Last but not least, there's a question of speed, because making this transformation happen in a competitive landscape is about going fast, but also going fast in the right manner. So as you can see on the screen, there is the notion that it's not just about pure speed, it's about combining speed and control so that every single use case can be properly understood, mastered, and delivered. That ultimately is what will enable AI to significantly accelerate the transformation of organizations. So those messages are not new. If you have been on our product days before, you've heard it all. Now, what does it mean in the current context? In the current context, it means that we need to look and we need to accelerate on building towards three main pillars. First things first, and if you have been joining Clément's previous session, I'll go back on that. There's a question of accelerating the impact that can be delivered from GenAI. Then we will go down into the two other elements that you can see on the screen. One, which is very important for me, and back to what I was explaining before, meaning that AI remains a silo if it remains limited to a few people only or a few processes only. So there's a big question around how do you break these silos? How do you scale things out? Last but not least, we're also entering in a stage where regulation is starting to mature on the AI front, in that anticipating on regulatory readiness becomes a critical element towards AI success. So let me first deep dive into what we mean by accelerating GenAI impact. When we look at the usage of GenAI, we have to break it down in a number of different buckets. Bucket number one, to deliver on GenAI, there is a critical need towards being able to tap into new types of services. These new types of services can be managed externally, can be hosted internally. These new types of services also change a lot. When we put that slide together a year ago, there were less logos on that slide. If we had tried to put one together 18 months ago, it would have been even less. And so as we go, this new technology is structuring itself. We see more and more providers. We see also more and more shades of providers with, let's say, very large generalistic providers and more specialized ones. As companies and as organizations are going to be willing to make usage of GenAI, the first element that is critical for us is making sure that there is the right type of access and the right type of scalable, secured access to these services. On our side, this is what we called LLM Mesh, which was presented by Dataiku now almost a year ago. Once these capabilities are brought inside the organization, the second need is to actually make something of these services. They remain pretty useless unless they're being aligned to a specific business objective. And that business objective can be tied to delivering on different types of NLP tasks. It can be tied to transforming internal contents into actual knowledge that can be used. It can be tied to making the right type of ask to an LLM to have it performed tasks in the right way, which is what prompts are about. It can be tied to having the right type of conversational interface, and so on and so on. So as the AI platform that is here to help organizations accelerate on GenAI, not only do we want to make sure that you have access to your choice of GenAI providers and the capacity to easily switch across providers, but we also want to make sure that you're capable of putting GenAI at use. Putting GenAI at use comes in with its own scaling challenges. These scaling challenges can be tied to the challenge of monitoring costs, the challenge of having in place the right type of guardrails, which can be quite specific to from one LM to another, not to say from one use case to another, and is tied also to the capacity to actually monitor the quality of your use cases at scale. This is what we mean by guard services. Last but not least, and I was talking about the arrival of new regulations. As regulation is stepping in, as also with GenAI, new risks are arising, there is the need to have proper governance in place. Hence why we're building more and more towards the capacity for you to be able to enforce regulatory-driven processes on the management of your AI portfolios, and also more specifically, have the right type of registry today for LLMs, but tomorrow for every single component of your GenAI strategies. If you had joined the session before, you have seen this with Clément. Now, I just wanted to give you a little bit of perspective of where do we think the market sits right now and how it's influencing our roadmap and our building. Last year, when we sat down and looked at what was happening on the GenAI front, we identified a number of different patterns that can support the usage of GenAI. One of these patterns is basically accelerating the usage of the delivery of NLP types of use cases, meaning that it's the possibility to move unstructured data into structured data. That is this is the pattern that we called structure, and which can typically be used for entity resolution, for converting text documents into a number of tabular data that can themselves be used for other analytics use cases. And that's one of these patterns. On the right-hand side, the second pattern is the one that we called answer, which is actually the capacity to converse with LLMs in order to transform whatever documents, data, and contents into the right type of source of truth, into the right type of insights. And we have seen this happening for more and more types of use cases. It can be your HR contracts, it can be insurance contracts, it can be whatever type of specific sales material you have. It can also be about being in a position to ask questions to data sets, for instance. In the middle, you will find the pattern that is actually aligned to the name of this technology, generate, which is the capacity to create images, create reports, create new comments. So in that case here, financial forecasting. Sorry for the coughing. Interestingly, when we look at what our customers are doing today, we see that the bulk of their focus, and maybe it's the case on your side, is focused on making sure that conversational use cases are being delivered. Let's face it, a year and a half ago when ChatGPT emerged, it was the first time that mass audiences were being exposed to the capacity to interact with a new technology. And it seemed so simple. It seemed also almost magical because those LMs are trained on data, and that suddenly that data was being made accessible. So ever since ChatGPT arrived, there has been an ambition for most large organizations to actually tap into its potential to solve some of the day-to-day pain points that are being faced in their companies. These pain points can be around just basic daily productivity. It can be around suddenly tapping into all the unstructured data that they are rich of, and which is not always easy to find. It can also be about suddenly unlocking the discovery of structured data, which historically has always been in the hands of people dedicated to its analysis. Hence why today, when we look at what's happening in the market, answer as a pattern is one of the biggest ones. The second is more focused on structuring data, so turning unstructured data into structured data to then fuel back more analytics processes, typically the usage of customer satisfaction reviews. These all were into data science backlogs, and suddenly the arrivals of LLMs is acting as a booster. The generate pattern is the one that is a bit behind. Why is it important for me to share this with you? First, I'm quite sure that next year, if I put something similar on the screen, it will have changed. We are seeing the generate pattern starting to pop up more and more as these types of answer use cases are becoming more and more a bit more mundane. We also see a need for these answer use cases, a need to structure themselves. We think that over time, if companies just start having chatbot after chatbot after chatbot popping up, it will just become a new little frenzy of chatbots that will be unmanageable for companies. So there will be some consolidation there, or there will be the need to have overarching conversational layer on top of these. Structure will probably just continue being what it is today, which is something that data science teams can do, or that democratized data science can provide in order to transform what was historically not usable sources of data into new types of data. So on our side, and I will just be repeating a bit what you have heard before, in the very short term, we are actually working towards reinforcing the product vision that I've presented before, and also making sure that whatever are these urgent patterns can be delivered very quickly. Practically speaking, it means that typically evaluation, which is critical in order for customers to be able to scale delivery of GenAI, becomes something much more achievable than delivering something in custom code every time. So with LLM Evaluate, which is being released in October, you now have access to a scalable way of applying standard metrics, LLM as a judge, but also developing your own custom metrics across your different GenAI use cases. Dataiku Answers, which is our way to supporting the acceleration of conversational use cases, across the enterprise is now a pretty mature product, embracing most of the standard use cases, from bringing in your own LLM in the organization down to chatting with your own unstructured content, so RAG, or chatting with datasets. In October, we are adding bring your own documents and generating images. By that stage, we will have reached a pretty complete set of use cases with Dataiku answers. And we will be moving to something which will be more around how to then unify the experiences for one single person in the organization to all these different types of chat use cases. And we will disclose more around that in the coming months. On Coast Guard, we have a mature offer, which allows you to be able to monitor LLM costs across your LLM providers, use cases, and users. When we released Coast Guard initially, I had some questions around that, around why are you doing this? If I use that LLM provider, they give me access to my cost, they give me access to budgets. I don't need your capabilities, which was right. But this is true while you remain at the level of having just one LLM provider, maximum two, and just a few use cases. The minute you want to start scaling, the minute you want to start combining use cases the minute you want to start combining LLM providers for different use cases, the minute you want to start giving budgets and enforcing budget rules, it becomes a very different story. And so this is the building that we're building towards. Today with Dataiku, you can't yet enforce budget rules. This is something that will be coming down the line, but you can already define budgets and monitor their completion. Last but not least, and this is more planned in the next few months, today on the agent side, it is possible to build agents in Dataiku, but we don't straight away manage their end-to-end lifecycle. This will change with Python agents, which will be a new object represented in Dataiku, which will then be managed as any other object that you know in Dataiku today, and which we believe will be a key accelerator to actually starting unlocking the potential of agents. If we go back to my previous slide, you didn't see agents in there. And that was by design. Today, in the types of large, complex organizations we support, agents is still very much exploratory. We do believe that agents are going to start being on the rise, and that in order to support that, end-to-end lifecycle management, connection to the rest of the analytics stack, management of tools in a well-governed way is going to become important. Hence the addition of this feature and much more that will be coming down the line. So between, unfortunately, a little bit of coughing on my side, I think it gave you some insights around what's happening with us when we talk about accelerating GenAI impact. Now I'm going to turn to our second pillar, which is around breaking AI silos and what it means. Breaking AI silos can mean a number of different things. It can mean, how do I make sure that AI doesn't get restricted to a certain number of use cases? It can also mean, how do I make sure that AI doesn't remain the privilege of a number of different people in the organization? Again, it is not to say that data professionals are doing a bad job with data. Far from it. I still firmly believe that a good AI strategy is fully dependent on having high quality data professionals inside an organization. I, however, believe in a few things. First, that you need to bring people together. You need to bring people who have business acumen and data proficiency together in order to deliver the high value AI use cases. And I also believe that there's a number of professionals inside the organizations who should be making better and more active usage of data on their own without having to be having a dependency on data professionals who themselves could do much more for their companies. Hence this category called breaking AI silos. As part of that, we're going to be doing a number of things. We've already started adding in Dataiku what we called AI assistants. You must have discovered that we have AI Prepare, AI Code Assistant, and AI Explain within Dataiku as a platform. Adding AI Assistant is a natural path for us in order to always make Dataiku simpler to use, more democratized, but also to accelerate on productivity. If tomorrow, instead of having to manually click on different buttons or to manually code, I'm capable of giving simple instructions and ask the platform to do it, I am in a position to go much faster while keeping full control on whatever is being done. Coming next on top of these different AI assistants will be text to flow, which will be a simple way to add steps to the Dataiku flows that you know today, and then we will have more elements coming. Going faster is a very important part of democratization, but it's not the only element. Having the right element of trust in data is, in my view, almost as important as having the question of speed. Because there's one thing for sure, is that notably on the business professional side, they place trust when, one, they understand, second, they are in a position to have belief that the underlying quality is high enough. Data quality is an ongoing struggle for any organization. The organization that tells you that they have sorted it out either doesn't completely understand what we are talking about, second, doesn't see that it's always going to be an ongoing process. But it's an ongoing battle that can be won or that can become a positive one if it is tightly tied back to the building cycle. We have fully revamped our data quality capabilities in 12.6, allowing for people to have a much simpler understanding of where they stand with data quality. Moving forward, we will also be adding more capabilities towards having data quality templates. So being in a position to roll out data quality rules across different types of use cases. The main addition that I wanted to present to you today is around lineage. So with Dataiku, you have a very natural path to lineage through the flow, but the flow shows you relationships between different data sets or different steps of your data projects. With this new version of lineage, actually, we're taking this vision down to the column level, meaning that you will be in a simplified, you will have a simplified access to understanding how each column is tied to the rest of your flow, and more importantly, understand what could be the implications of changes you would want to bring to your data projects. First things first, we are answering a true need for better lineage understanding. Second, we see this as being a cornerstone for accelerate usage of data products across the organization. We've talked about AI assistance and we've talked about trust. One of the other elements we have been working on towards in the past years has been to build into Dataiku the capacity for you to have access to more out-of-the-box use cases and also to capabilities that allow for more inclusion of more builders inside the building cycle. Today, you have access to 35 Dataiku solutions. These Dataiku solutions are here to do two things. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the other, and sometimes it's both. First things first, they're here to help you crack use cases, data science use cases, in a much faster manner. We're talking on average from going from a 2-month in order to deliver down to 5 days. Why is that? We bring to you fully pre-built use cases that have very well outlined data structures that you can then take and apply to your organization. These doesn't come as a black box. You can decide to make any form of adjustment as you need, and you can decide to also very easily extend beyond. As an example, we have something today that is dedicated to omni-channel marketing in the pharma space. We have seen one of our customers implement it in about less than 5 days and then extend it beyond to a next best action model that was a custom build. As we're working on this topic, we're also looking at how do we make sure that these modern analytics are being brought to more domains? People working in marketing, people working in finance, people working in engineering for manufacturing. Meaning that you will find in solutions different assets such as process mining or parameter analyzer or reconciliation, which is one of the new additions we're going to be added before the end of the year, which are here to allow these domain professionals perform specific data analytics related tasks in a package format within the data cycle. As we're doing this, we are giving our ambition is to give organizations an accelerated path, not just to crack single use cases, but to actually rethink full value chains. On this slide here, you can see an example of what is a comprehensive marketing analytics value chain, where we look at accelerating customer acquisition, speeding customer growth, optimizing customer retention. And you can see based on this slide that today we already have 6 Dataiku solutions that are tightly connected and rely on a consistent data model, and that are going to be augmented over time with new capabilities, such as marketing mix modeling, which should be released before the end of the year, and churn, which will be coming shortly next year. Dataiku solutions are here to be used by data professionals or by domain professionals who are tightly connected to data. Once we've done that, we still haven't included in the scope those people who need to take a decision based on data. And those people, in most cases, at some point in time, have to use data, transform it into insights, typically slides, in order to make sure that the decision is being made. With Dataiku Stories, our ambition is to actually close this gap. In a regular cycle, the way it would work is that I have a sales analyst that is sitting somewhere in the organization and is going to be using some data that has been put together by, let's say, a marketing analytics professional. That data set includes some descriptive data on past transactions, but it also includes let's say, customer scoring that has been put together by some clustering analysis, clustering mechanics. And that person is just going to be using that data as it is. So they're going to be taking the data, downloading it as a CSV, putting it in Excel, starting computing the data, realize that they have a gap, going back to the analytics professional, having some changes done again, re-download it back, re-put it back in Excel. And once they have some visualizations that kind of make sense, start copying and pasting into PowerPoint, and then realize that they don't have the insights, and then go back to the full initial cycle. Excel is going to stay, PowerPoint is going to stay. We're not trying to take these off, but we do believe that today we can actually compress that time between analytics and AI and that business decision moment by actually giving the means for people to turn any form of analytics output into insights, into slides, with the power of GenAI to facilitate the build inside Dataiku. This can then be exported directly into PowerPoint or in any other slide tooling if needed, or simply consumed on Dataiku, where it will benefit from a constant refresh and update mechanism. Dataiku Stories is a new capability that is today being announced as a preview, will be accessible in beta until year end, and will be announced in GA beginning of next year. To summarize, as you will have understood, we have a number of capabilities that are being worked on when we speak about breaking AI silos. On democratizing modern analytics, AI assistance and data trust are 2 of the very important topics that we are working on. Dataiku solutions are here to deliver more augmented business processes and bring more builders in the AI cycle. With Dataiku Stories, we're really here around closing the AI to business decision gap by making sure that all these different frictions that exist between the moment the data is manufactured and the moment decisions are being made are eliminated. This was my pillar number 2. We've talked about GenAI. We've talked about breaking AI silos. We still haven't talked about one topic that is, for me, one of the deepest changes that is happening in AI today, which is the arrival of regulation. You must all know that EU AI Act has now launched officially the countdown towards regulation of AI. a few months ago, in June to be a bit more precise, the EU Act was announced with a time for enforcement of 24 months, meaning today, every single organization that is active in the European Union now has 21 months to get prepared with the requirements tied to the EU Act. What is important to consider with the EU Act is that it comes in with requirements that actually will be quite substantial in terms of application to all these organizations. First things first, it comes in with a notion of a risk pyramid, meaning practically speaking, any organization will have to be able to understand and classify its use cases towards that risk pyramid in order to make sure that they have the right understanding of their AI portfolio and are in a position to apply the right type of controls to anything that would be considered as being limited or high risk. High risk being the orange bucket that you see here. These risk considerations for the EU are supported by the conviction of the EU that AI could have negative impact towards equity of treatments of citizens in the European Union. Hence why it is focusing heavily on how to make sure that all use cases which could be detrimental to these equal treatments, so typically equal access to education, equal access to health, equal access to employment, are being considered as being high risk and are supported by the same type of risk reviews. The second big chunk of the EU Act actually concerns generative AI, and more precisely, Gen AI providers. Gen AI providers are going to be asked to be open, to be ready for much more stringent third-party due diligence practices than were in the past, notably are going to be asked to disclose on their training data, on their training approaches, most notably when they provide high training data generalist models, which is the case for most externally managed LLMs today. What is interesting there is that for companies, even when they don't themselves manufacture LLMs, the push is going to be towards understanding which Gen AI provider is used and for what. And more importantly, if LLMs provided by third parties were themselves to be encapsulated into paid services, they could be exposed to becoming Gen AI providers themselves, thus exposing themselves to the same types of requirements. Last but not least, this is all going to be supported by penalties. These penalties are being structured the same way as the GDPR ones. It will be either fines or a percentage of annual worldwide revenues. The reason why I mentioned GDPR is that if we take a step back on what happened with GDPR 10 years ago, GDPR marked a substantial change towards how data, personal data, data privacy has been ever considered since. And even though many of you might not be in organizations that are today active in the EU, it is safe to assume that the arrival of the EU Act actually is taking us to enter a stage that we could be calling the stage of regulated AI. Indeed, EU Act is just a start. We see that in Australia and Singapore, in the UK, and in many more countries, voluntary frameworks, early signs of regulation. In the case of Canada, for instance, active work towards regulation is in progress. And in the US, even if we don't have for the moment something that firm at the federal level, there are some things at the agencies level, a lot is happening at the states level, which means that for companies, for any organizations moving forward, it will not just be towards, let's imagine what the EU Act is going to be about, and maybe let's stop having anything to do with the EU. First things first, it might not be the right business decision. But second, I think it is safe just to consider that the EU Act is a simple starting point, and that over time, all organizations will have to compose with multiple requirements that will be both slightly similar, but also very different, and they will need to be in a position to apply these different types of layers to their entire AI portfolio. At our level, we believe it absolutely requires to have governance as a real part of your AI building and operationalization environment. Hence why a few years ago, we announced the launch of what we called Govern. Govern is a space dedicated to AI governance and to the oversight of your AI portfolio, be that AI portfolio built in Dataiku, but also in other third-party systems, like the ones you can see on the screen. We also believe that Govern is only one of the key elements of AI governance. Govern is here to allow people who have more of a risk management mindset to be able to look at the entire AI portfolios, do the right type of checks, do the right type of sign-off, and more importantly, be in a position to report and audit as and when needed. But those types of processes are not successful if they are not implemented bottoms up by the people who are actually building on AI. Hence why in our design environment, all the builders will be finding substantial amount of tooling to help them towards these responsible AI and risk practices. On responsible AI front, there's a number of things that are here to notably support better understanding of anything that would be towards biases and fairness. We also have a number of capabilities that are focused on stringent documentation and testing. All of this gets fully passed into our operationalization layer, which is also unified by mindset, because again, we're also cognizant that the big organizations that you're representing today have a certain level of complexity, and that you could be in a position to not just want to organize those types of practices on Dataiku, but on multiple different environments. In order to achieve this, within Govern, you will find access to a number of AI governance solutions that are notably dedicated to compliance readiness, but also to other type of risk practices that can be more industry focused, like GXP and more risk management, as well as a number of services. So as we're moving forward, where do we stand? We already have a first version of our EUA Act readiness solution. It was based on the first reading that we did of the EUA Act. A new version is coming out, much more complex, because between the first version and the final version of the EUA Act, there has been much reinforcement on it. And that new version will be made available to our advanced governed customers in the next few weeks. This is here to support an acceleration towards compliance readiness. It doesn't mean that it's a guarantee for compliance. We indeed believe that the way these regulations is going to be read and interpreted needs to be managed by each organization based on their own risk appetite and exposure. Hence why Govern comes in with significant flexibility in order for you to be in a position to adjust and enforce what you will be considering as being the right approach to this regulation. As more and more regulations pop up, we will be enriching the range and also propagating more industry-specific ones, like on model risk management, which is already available, or on GXP streamlining, which we see as a need for pharma environments, notably. Moving forward, we understand also, as I was saying, that companies are going to be forced to manage what we could almost refer to as being a multi-layered cake. Different types of processes, different types of policies, new policies needing to be enforced, with a need to almost close the loop from the moment where the idea of a use case is going to be generated down to the moment that the use case is going to be started to its actual delivery and operationalization. In order to do this, we're working on something that we call governance policies, which is a much more sophisticated but also integrated way of managing those types of complex requirements working also much more towards building this into the building cycle, and also with the right type of visual representations of levels of risks for the entire AI portfolio. I wanted to do a little bit of summarization, and before we close, to come back to what I have been able to cover with you over the past 40 minutes. I have taken you through 3 different pillars. One focused on how we will be enriching Dataiku with the capacity for you to deliver much faster GenAI use cases, but also with the right type of control environment. Something like LLM evaluation will be a significant contributor to this. We are going to continue to continuously work towards breaking AI silos by bringing more people into the building cycle, which is one of the objectives of Dataiku solutions, by making sure that for them, Dataiku is always easier to use, hence the investment on AI assistance, but also by making sure that there's the right type of level of trust, hence the work being done on data quality and on lineage. Breaking AI silos is also making sure that there's less discontinuity between the moment data is being built and the moment decisions are being made, hence the arrival of Dataiku Stories, which will be in private preview until the end of the year. And last but not least, and you will have understood that this is something that is very dear to my heart, I strongly believe that we have entered a new era, and that new era of AI regulation is going to be one that will deeply change our code and which cannot be tackled properly without embedded governance. The idea that governance is not disconnected from the building cycle and that we manage to bring governance back inside the building cycle is, in my view, the only way to actually make sure that scale and acceleration continue to happen. In all honesty, when we make those types of presentations, we always have to make choices. I had to make choices on the 3 dimensions that we believe are today the most important ones in the market, but also in terms of the work that we're doing. There's much more that is in the background. I could have been talking about traditional ML. Poor ML has suddenly become something that is now considered as being a bit more mundane, but it doesn't mean that we are not investing on it. We believe that the future of GenAI impact will actually be by bringing together machine learning and GenAI. And so for us, continue to reinforce our ML capabilities is also one of the dimensions we're working on. We are working on making sure that collaboration is always easier at a given scale. We believe that scale will rely on more unification across systems, across types of operationalization, for instance, what we called XOps. And so what you have seen here is, let's say, the highlights of our product vision, actively working towards a continuous ambition, which is to make sure that for every single business challenge, every single business process, there is the capacity to deliver the right type of data and AI answer to it. With that, Lynn, I will pause there and see if there are any questions.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Sophie. We do have a couple of questions that I think we can get to. If anyone else has questions that are top of mind, you have Sophie at your disposition, so it's a great opportunity. Please don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A section. But while everyone's thinking of their questions, I think we can start with a few that are already here. So earlier on in the session, I think it was when you were talking about talk to your data with Dataiku Answers, somebody asked about it's a broader question, but I think we can talk about it in the context of Dataiku Answers, which is how good is GenAI with structured data? So can you maybe talk about what are some of our customers doing with Dataiku Answers specifically, and how are they using talk to your data today?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So how good is GenAI now with structured data? It's as good as the structured data is, meaning that GenAI works well when we give it the right type of tools to work with. It will work well with unstructured data if the unstructured data itself is of good quality and has very good metadata description. Because basically what GenAI is going to do is it's going to tap into the description and high-level understanding of the data schema in order to formulate typically the right type of SQL query. So when those data descriptions are not available, unfortunately, the reliability of the GenAI answer is going to be quite poor. If we can, so it's a blessing and a curse, as every time there are challenges. I see this as an opportunity to accelerate on data quality work, and also in building the need for better curated data. Our customers today are looking at this in different ways. Some of them are seeing this as an opportunity to basically unlock access to very well curated data sets. Typically, we have one large retail customer who has a good, well-structured data set representing all their historical transactions, and they want to make sure that more people are in a position to have the right answers from this data. So that's one side of it. We also see pharma companies who are looking at these capabilities as a way to empower the people working in R&D to have a first level of conversational a relationship with data before actually making active investments. So this gives you an idea of some of the flavoring.
Wonderful. We have another question from Ignacio. He says, AI prepare is useful in 99% of cases, so kudos to the team. But he says, sometimes we see behaviors that might be related to the prompts that are being sent along with our questions. Is it possible to quickly send some kind of feedback to Dataiku so that that can be improved?
Yeah, no, thanks a lot for this. And I do agree with you. What's interesting with these assistants is there's a question of how much are they useful to do some form of initial discovery of capabilities versus how much they can fully execute complex tasks. The way I see AI Prepare today is it's actually a very good tool to lower the barrier to using Dataiku. For complex tasks, indeed, we can still do reinforcement on the prompts. So today, for these types of capabilities, we actually provide the services ourselves, meaning that we have visibility on how they're being used, which is acting as a good feedback mechanism. If you have some specific feedbacks, don't hesitate to let us know through your normal customer success management channels.
Great. This next question is quite interesting, mostly because I think it could be taken in two ways, and I think both ways are an interesting question. Gottfried has asked, can you give us an example of how governance can be enforced with Gen AI? And I'm not sure if you mean, Gottfried, how you can enforce governance of Gen AI or whether you can use Gen AI to enforce governance. But I think both ways it's interesting. So maybe, Sophie, you can answer for both.
So I have one person in my team who is working on AI governance. I have a full part of my team working on AI governance, but the person leading that team, called Jacob Biswick, is the only person at Dataiku who has read the EUA Act end to end. So 276 pages of delight. Why did he read it and not ask GenAI to read it for him? At that stage, because he was going to be making the full build and recommendation of what the EUA Act solution was going to be about, he wanted to be extremely precise in understanding the very specific dimensions of the regulation. So what does it mean? It means that in any organization, when new regulations will arrive, some people are still going to read it, not because the GenAI wouldn't be good enough to provide an answer, but because at some point in time, some professionals will need to have a comprehensive understanding of all the requirements. Having said that, if you exclude the work that these specific individuals will have to do, GenAI will actually be very good at providing answers to specific questions that you could have around a piece of regulation. So within the regulation, what would be the provisions towards blah, 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 blah. More importantly, we believe that GenAI can actually be a real catalyst to complying with the regulation, be it in terms of generating the right type of material, generating the right type of evidence, enforcing the right type of controls, almost also nudging builders with the right type of activities that they need to do to tick the boxes on the controls they need to enforce. So to summarize, governance is being pushed because of the arrival of GenAI, but indeed, GenAI will probably be an opportunity towards governance, towards this new type of regulatory compliance.
Great. We have one fast question that I think we can handle quickly, and then there's another one that might be a bit longer, and it kind of speaks to what you spoke about at the end, which is the fact that we are still working on other things like machine learning. So, quick one first. Dataiku's AI assistants, I think that's what you mean, Christopher, by agents. Are these run on the Dataiku side, or do these use the organization's LLM mesh?
Sorry, I dropped the. Can you repeat, Lynn? Sorry about that.
No worries. I said I think Christopher said Dataiku's AI agents, but I think he means AI assistants. Are they run on the Dataiku side, or does it use the organization's LLM mesh?
So for the time being, they use Dataiku side. We're looking at allowing organizations to plug it on their choices of LLMs through LLM mesh in the next few months.
Great, that was a quick one. This one, maybe not so quick. So Christian asks, in the recent London user group, it was mentioned that 2/3 of Dataiku's R&D budget is being spent on GenAI. Given that most customers are barely starting to look at GenAI, do you think other product capabilities, do you think there's too much focus on GenAI? And I think you touched on this at the end, but maybe you can expand a bit more.
Two-thirds. I wouldn't have made it 2/3. I think today it is capturing. It is capturing a significant portion of the. Our R&D is structured by themes. We have one part of our R&D teams that is dedicated to what we call AI/ML, and within that team, indeed, at least 2/3 is currently being spent on GenAI. It doesn't mean the rest is not important anymore. It means also the rest has reached a certain level of maturity where we believe that we can still provide reinforcements, but we also believe that it's our responsibility to make sure that GenAI can be unlocked quickly. On everything else that is tied to Dataiku, being governance, stories, lineage, and all these other things that I have been talking about, we are working on our roadmaps. It happens that some of these roadmaps can benefit from being enhanced with some GenAI capabilities, notably on the assistant front. But on all the rest, it has been about executing the end-to-end vision that we have, where GenAI represents today one new additional potential of value for our customers that we want to bring back into a comprehensive AI platform, because we believe this is how it's going to be unlocked in the future.
Wonderful. If there are I think that covers pretty much all the questions. There was another one that I answered in the question answer panel, so that's great. I'll give a couple of final minutes for people to ask questions, as we do have a few minutes. And in the meantime, I'll talk about the next couple of sessions coming up for those of you who want to stay for them. So coming up next, we have JBS Sustainability Group and how it revolutionized its audits process with generative AI. So a wonderful generative AI use case with one of our customers. They will talk about how they specifically used RAG and Dataiku to streamline the process of answering sustainability-related questionnaires for massive efficiency gains. So if you are available and want to stick around, highly recommend sticking around just after this for that session. And after that session, we have NVIDIA and Dataiku better together. So we will have Will from NVIDIA as well as Anjane from Dataiku talking about how with the two technologies you can go from roadmap to reality with generative AI. So talking about how the two technologies really work together. So those will be two really great sessions. If there are no more questions, we will end a few minutes early. And we'll see you in the next, just under the wire. Sophie, you have a question just under the wire. Are there plans to upgrade code studios? In particular, Visual Studio Code is dated.
Code studios, not in the very, very short term. There are some things that we are adding, notably on the managing branch mergers. More on the Git integration side. But if there are any other feedbacks like that with any specific suggestions, don't hesitate to channel them through. We have been talking a lot about, let's say, things that are more lower code in this presentation, which doesn't mean that we don't see high value in people being able to do code. Actually, we see extremely strong value in people at being able to do both. Lower code to accelerate and to do things that are just more streamlined, notably on the data prep side. So yes, long story short, if you see things that would be good feedback for us, don't hesitate to share them. And I will apologize for my dreadful voice and for the coughing and for all these lovely things. And it was an absolute pleasure to be able to share this with you. I do hope that next year's, I don't know, there will be less of a full time.
Yeah. Try not to hold it right at go back to school season and when everyone's catching colds. So thank you, Sophie, for joining. Super insightful. I hope everyone enjoyed the session. Like I said, please do stick around for JBS Sustainability Group next, as well as NVIDIA after that. In the meantime, we do have a couple minutes between those sessions. Sophie talked about our upgrades to data quality, always a hot topic. So we'll be showing you a little bit more in depth what that feature looks like while you wait for the next session to start. We'll see you there. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Hi.
Managing oversight and governance in MLOps can be challenging, especially for large organizations with multiple platforms. Siloed platforms can lead to inefficiencies and difficulties in maintaining standardized governance. Dataiku has now created the solution to this issue by centralizing your MLOps oversight with unified monitoring. Expanding on external model support and deploy anywhere capabilities, unified monitoring serves as a watchtower for your productionalized models, regardless of whether they're in Dataiku or your cloud AI platform of choice. In the Dataiku deployer, you'll find the unified monitoring dashboard, which is comprised of 3 distinct screens: Overview, Dataiku Projects, and API Endpoints. The Overview screen displays global status updates for both Dataiku Projects for batch scoring and API Endpoints for real-time use cases. It also shows the count of our API endpoints used across various infrastructures, such as Dataiku, Azure ML, AWS SageMaker, and Google Vertex AI, easily seeing how many active deployments we have in each platform. This screen ultimately serves as a triage board, highlighting deployments with errors and warnings, allowing IT operators and ML engineers to swiftly identify and resolve issues. For a more in-depth view, we can click on each object to access deployment details. Taking it a step further, let's focus on batch Dataiku projects. Each row represents a project in production in our Dataiku automation node, and each project features 4 critical statuses: global, deployment, model, and execution. These indicators provide a quick overview of potential issues. For instance, if the model status shows a warning, an ML engineer can directly examine the model evaluation. Similarly, if the execution status presents a problem, an operator can swiftly access the project's automation scenario and remedy the error. Unified monitoring also allows us to filter or sort by specific statuses, allowing ML ops owners to pinpoint concerns and their locations at a glance. The third screen displays all API endpoints in deployment, and each row represents an individual endpoint from either the Dataiku API node or a cloud-based ML platform. Beyond the statuses seen in the project screen, we can also gauge response time, volume, and activity of our endpoints. These crucial insights enable us to instantly assess API health, performance, and reliability, allowing teams to proactively address issues and optimize resource allocation for real-time use cases, leading to enhanced user experiences. Finally, admins can select which project and API infrastructures to monitor with access to comprehensive logs for troubleshooting. The most remarkable feature in the settings is the introduction of monitoring scopes, enabling status details of remote cloud API deployments to integrate with Dataiku's unified monitoring dashboards, even without explicit inclusion in a Dataiku project. So this means exactly what you think it means. Unified monitoring serves as a 360-degree central hub for MLOps operators, providing a cohesive view of deployment health across all ML platforms, projects, and endpoints. With unified monitoring and Dataiku, enable your teams to concentrate on efficiency while maintaining complete oversight. Utilize deployment statuses and details to comprehend the performance of your endpoints and projects, while the rest of your teams focus on continuous AI innovation. Thanks for watching.